Tucker Carlson, his latest investigation is into Thomas Crooks. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the individual who shot at Trump, killed one of his supporters, and then was killed by Secret Service. And because this happened during the Biden administration, MAGA immediately ran wild with conspiracy theories. There wasn't a lone shooter. This was a Biden op. Biden planned this. Crazy stuff, right? But what ended up happening is then the Trump administration takes over, right? They have all the information. They can do their own investigation. And all of a sudden, MAGA was going, hey, we thought you were going to tell us there was more to the Thomas Crooks story. That he wasn't just a lone maniac, which he was, but there was a bigger conspiracy. But then, just like differently, but Bondi, and specifically in that same interview where they got into a bunch of trouble over the Epstein stuff, you had Patel and Bongino saying there's not more to this story. I would tell you if there were. And so in the Epstein case, that actually was part of a cover-up. In this case, it was, I do think they were being honest, that there wasn't a bigger story to Thomas Crooks being an asset of intelligence and Biden directed him to blah, blah, blah. So then MAGA's in a weird place, right? Because now their guy, right, Trump was the one who was shot at. Their guy is in power and telling us there's not more to the story that we had built up a whole conspiracy rah-rah around. So Tucker goes, well, maybe it's the Trump administration covering up the broader conspiracy, which I struggled to understand a little bit, but okay. Now it's Trump covering up the truth about his own assassination attempt, or Patel or Bongino, and them actually engaging in very of conspiracy, in a sense, around Epstein, I think fuels MAGA skepticism. I just wish they would direct it at other real things instead of Thomas Crooks and how maybe there was an op there and it wasn't just a maniac, a deranged maniac. So here's the first part of who is Thomas Crooks, Tucker Carlson's video. I'll show you Kash Patel's response to it. And they were able to get a hold of never before seen social media activity from Thomas Crooks in the years leading up to his assassination attempt. And a lot of what I explained to you about this guy is getting mega confirmed by these new social media items.
Pretended that Crooks was a right-winger. At 11:35 p.m. on July 19th, 2019, in response to an MSNBC video, Crooks wrote, quote, Ilhan Omar and others are invaders and should honestly be killed and their dead bodies sent back. At 1:17 a.m. on July 20th, 2019, Crooks commented on a CNN video. He said Donald Trump was the literal definition of patriotism. 7 hours later, he commented on an MSNBC video. He wrote, I hope a quick, painful death to all the deplorable immigrants and anti-Trump congresswoman who don't deserve anything this country has given them. That evening, on a separate MSNBC video, he wrote, quote, every one of the Trump-hating Democrats deserve to have their heads chopped off and put on stakes for the world to see what happens when you fuck with America. These sorts of comments continued for months and became increasingly violent. The following day, Crooks responded to a CBS Evening News video about the squad saying this, quote, this is going to be blatantly racist, but I hope Trump has these people murdered.
So Tucker does the thing where he doesn't really tell you throughout this story what's your theory, you know? Like what are you exposing? Okay, this is more information about how he was posting deranged things. And in this case, a few years ago, was a hardcore pro-Trump guy. I'll show you where Tucker says his political ideology shifted. I'll show that part. But what's the theory? Tucker never says. He just kind of, what are chemtrails? Oh, maybe the government's spraying chemicals on us to turn us gay. We don't know. I don't know. What is it? Oh, and doesn't really tell you, okay, what's the actual theory? So that was kind of annoying, as always, with him. But we'll keep listening. It is notable that, as I've told you, you had a guy who came from a very right-wing background. As you just saw, he's calling for the beheading of Democrats. And then at some point becomes disillusioned with Trump. And then is talking about and looking up just political leaders in general. and was even searching for information about the DNC and where Biden was going to be, and became, as he had been saying for a long time, interested in violence against, it used to be Democrats, and then it just became our political leaders in general. After coming from a really deep red pro-Trump background where he's talking about Democrats getting killed. It's notable. But I don't know how it serves the he wasn't in this by himself theory.
And yet, in early 2020, Crooks seemed to change radically. On January 23rd of that year, he referred to, quote, Trump's stupidity. He began to mock the concept of the deep state.
Wait, what does this one say? I can see many people getting away with what Trump has done. Billionaires, longtime senators, governors, really anyone related to powerful people or political parties. Sure, being president makes it even easier. Also, keep in mind, the only reason we may know about this because of Trump's stupidity. I mean, he's not really good at hiding things. I'm willing to bet the sort of conduct happens quite a bit and nobody finds out. I don't really know what that's about.
Referred to, quote, Trump's stupidity. He began to mock the concept of the deep state. He suggested it was a code word used by Trump supporters for, quote, anyone who disagrees with the right wing. Suddenly, he sounded like an MSNBC commentator. In February of 2020, he called out Trump supporters as, quote, too brainwashed to realize how dumb you are. I mean, literally, you guys sound like a cult at times. That same day, he called Trump and his supporters, quote, racist. It was an amazing transformation. That April, during the peak phase of the coronavirus lockdowns, Crooks wrote, quote, it seems that you people don't understand that sometimes public safety comes before your personal rights. Are you not willing to quarantine one member of your family to save the rest? If so, you are not a patriot and you aren't protecting anything. Around this time, the new left-wing version of Thomas Crooks became very critical of conservative media. He said at one point, quote, going to a Chinese New Year's party in America isn't putting you at risk for coronavirus, because, believe it or not, viruses don't spread through race like Tucker Carlson probably told you. That May, as state officials across the country
being name-checked is crazy.
overhauled election systems to promote mail-in voting, Crooks attacked Republican concerns about voter fraud as, quote, ignorant. 4 months later, in August 2020, his tone had shifted even further to the left. He said, quote, I believe the outcome will be irrelevant.
Yeah, you see? Perhaps, but Trump won an upset victory in 2016 and could do the same again. Either way, I believe the outcome will be irrelevant. I'm a little bit proud of myself just with the initial information we had about him way back when the story broke and we were talking about it more. There are some cases where you're like, this is a partisan individual. Like, he really feels like they're fighting for the Republican cause, the Democratic cause. Then in other cases, you have really radicalized, deranged people who, in the case of him, from what I can tell, starts getting venomous opposition to just our leaders in general and the system in general. And I think nothing confirms that more than someone who came from a really pro-Trump background, then started hating Trump, and then says, regardless of how the election goes, I don't think it will be relevant. Partisans who are getting radicalized by MSNBC or something don't think elections are irrelevant. They think that they're very relevant, right? So Tucker's kind of, I don't really know where he's going or what the point was of this, other than they found his social media accounts and the FBI hadn't previously divulged this stuff, even though in the initial findings, this all aligned with that stuff. So
further to the left, he said, quote, I believe the outcome will be irrelevant. In response to the same video, Thomas Crooks issued what sounds a lot like a digital manifesto. Quote, in my opinion, the only way to fight the government is with terrorism-style attacks. Sneak a bomb into an essential building and set it off before anyone sees you. Track down any important people or politicians, military leaders, etc., and try to assassinate them. Any sort of head-to-head fight is suicide, and even ambush or...
So you see, this is notable. To say again, I'm curious, one of the points that I would agree probably with Tucker on, despite him making a lot of conspiratorial claims, is should we be able to prevent stuff like this when you're publicly saying this stuff? Now Tucker's claim is the government purposely didn't stop it And I'll show you a Republican going what Tucker won't say all the way and going, that's because he was groomed by and prepared for this by the intel agencies. But the it's just usually the right wing gets really upset when you talk about trying to intervene and red flag laws with guns and stuff like that. Whenever you see people publicly saying, I think any important people, politicians, military leaders should be tracked down and we could assassinate them, which is then what he ends up going on to try to do. And I don't think it's fair to describe that post as left wing in ideology.
Surprise attacks likely aren't going to end well. These remarks were especially notable because they came at the final phase of Crooks' YouTube commenting. At that point, a new character emerged into the conversation, a user named Willie Tepes, who started pressuring Crooks to commit violence. For example, quote, if a gun and a badge is all that is needed, then authority obviously comes from the barrel of a gun. We have more guns than they do. There is no way we can avoid a war at this point, so you better just get used to the idea. We have nothing to lose and everything to win. And the alternative, a global police state, is unacceptable. Nothing in life is simple, but that is no argument against doing it. So who is this Willie Tepes? Unfortunately, we don't know. The FBI hasn't made any mention of him.
So that's the other part, which is, suspicious character, Willie Tepes. What role did this individual play in radicalizing? And it's, I'm just going to repeat, very fair to go, just like a lot of other mass shooters and people who commit different acts of violence, like public violence, there's sometimes a trail. There were warning signs. And we should do things to implement laws, or we should implement laws to prevent these acts of violence before they happen, when possible, without taking away violating people's rights. It's curious to me that he's a part of the very movement that always cries foul when anyone talks about that. Because he's not serving that point. He's not like, oh, well then yeah, maybe some red flag laws should be better implemented. He's saying probably Willie Tepes was an FBI asset and was being used to convince Crooks into doing the act of violence as a part of a conspiracy to kill Trump. That's really what he's going with. And that he didn't present any evidence of. He did present evidence of two people talking in very vile and dangerous ways and nothing being done because I guess no one flagged those posts. In response, Kash Patel responded. While we read this, please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate the show. Millions of people watch every month who aren't subscribed. Just by clicking that button, you help get the word out about the show. He said, Crooks case overview. And then he goes through, I don't want to read all that. He goes through we did a bunch of investigation, and Thomas Crooks identified, examined over 20 online accounts, data extracted from over a dozen electronic devices, examination of numerous financial accounts, and over 1,000 interviews and 2,000 public tips. The investigation conducted by over 480 FBI employees revealed Crooks had limited online and in-person interactions, planned and conducted the attack alone, and did not leak or share his intent to engage in the attack with anyone. So that was his response, which, who really cares what Kash Patel has to say with his track record? But what Tucker, just to repeat in case you're confused, is trying to allege is that it wasn't that investigators or law enforcement personnel missed that Crooks was out there, who at that point was just a random guy leaving crazy comments on YouTube. Missed it, but instead when they saw stuff like that, they then sent in someone to get him to go commit this specific act of violence. So Tucker's saying, well, Patel, you're wrong, because he did indicate his intention to engage in violence. Patel, I guess, is saying he didn't tell people or bring in anyone into the conspiracy about this specific act of violence. He was just saying, which if you've been on the internet, stuff that people say a lot, frighteningly. And I think we should take that more seriously. So, because Tucker just likes to ask questions and throw things out there, and who knows what happened? Who's Willie Tepes? Tim Burchett doesn't have that level of sophistication. So he won't do the I'm just asking questions. He gonna tell you what he believes. You better believe it. Dadgummit.
Dadgummit. These kids, they're programming them sure as the world. Now, that's going to make a ton of news, Congressman, so let's dive in. So you are alleging that Thomas Crooks was groomed by some type of dark intel program, MK Ultra or otherwise, in order to commit on that day the act of an assassination.
I think so. I've said that all along. I've said that, and I'm glad somebody with Tucker's credibility.
Credibility? Tucker credibility? The wait, chemtrails guy? That guy? Okay.
You know, his ability to, and this my dog snores over there. Sorry for that. With his credibility has brought it out, because I yell this stuff all the time and people just, let's just perch it. But look at the history. Look at where we're at in this country. Look at the deep state, the sewer as it is, and it's disgusting. And this is what happens, dude, when 12% of the population goes to the polls. They know we're so vulnerable, and we have very, very few people.
So podcast listeners, just so you can kind of imagine what we're experiencing together, he's like laying back on his couch and clearly calling in on his phone, and his camera's like shaking as he can't decide if he wants to lay his head back onto the couch cushion or sit it forward. You're doing an interview. I know it's just Benny. I want to give Benny much respect or effort either, but you could do a little bit more than this, Burchett. And clearly he's, turn on your heater, dude. He has this huge jacket on inside.
The lineup that could do the damage to them, like Trump. Trump's right. They're not after him. They're after us. He's just standing in the way.
Gosh, it's so cringe. What did he say at the end there?
Do the damage to them, like very few people in the lineup that could do the damage to them, like Trump. Trump's right. They're not after.
So, some organization got Thomas Crooks into their orbit, and despite there being no evidence of this, trained him and directed him to attack Trump, because that organization was associated with the deep state, and the deep state knew that Trump was too powerful and could destroy the deep state. And what makes the deep state bad, you might ask? This swamp. Well, they protect pedophiles. They engage in sex trafficking, right? This is kind of, they would say about the and now Trump is currently president. The deep state's so powerful they can train crooks and all that, but they still let Trump win. They can steal the 2020 election, but not the 2024 one for some reason. And now Trump is protecting pedophiles. Now Trump is covering for the Epstein files. Weird. So how is he such a big threat to the deep state? I'm confused. Don't the elites want like huge amounts of wealth? He's doing that for them. The biggest bill in the interest of that ever, maybe. He's covering for powerful elites who did terrible things to children, including himself potentially. So what is it that makes him not just the it you're talking about? And then, please follow me here. Would he not like to expose that a deep state org trained crooks or facilitated the assassination attempt against him? Because he's the one with the entire government now. So he's the one who has all the investigatory power and has the document about crooks. Why wouldn't he reveal it? Wouldn't he want to? So let me just get this straight, Tucker and Tim. Instead of a lone, deranged individual who came from a very pro-Trump background, was radicalized against the system, had talked a lot about political violence, but law enforcement personnel didn't take it seriously or see it, more likely, and became radicalized enough to want to kill some political leader, was searching for different leaders of different parties, saw Trump was coming in his area, and tried to kill him after being very gun obsessed, and then tragically led to the death of a supporter of Trump's. That's less likely than starting in the first Trump administration, because you remember the comments where Tepes came in, I think, was in 2020. So under Trump's first government, some intelligence agency or some government-associated organization, the deep state, started working with Crooks so that in 2023, was it 2023 or 2024? So that later, during the Biden administration, Crooks could go shoot Trump and get shot himself. And then the documents that prove that Trump is now covering up about his own assassination attempt because he's fighting the deep state. Maybe. You never know. As my little sister used to say, you never know. You never know. And meanwhile, Trump is repardoning, speaking of political violence, Trump is repardoning a January 6th defendant to erase an unrelated gun conviction. So this guy got pardoned for his participation. He was a Proud Boy militia guy. Got pardoned for his participation January 6th. Then, I guess, went, hey, but I'm still in prison because I got convicted of these other crimes. And Trump was like, oh, shoot, well, we don't want that. And is now just pardoning anyone who did January 6th, even for things that they committed outside of January 6th. Chris Murphy said this is so disturbing. Trump is now pardoning January 6th rioters for unrelated crimes, just to reward them for their violence to keep him in power. The Republican Party is in the full-time business of endorsing and incentivizing political violence. So scary. That's what this seems like. Then, do you remember a man, Paul Ingrassia, I think it was, who was in those young Republican group texts? You see, he's just a kid. He's just a kid. Look at him. Can you look up Paul Ingrassia's age? And he was the one who said, yeah, I do have a quote-unquote Nazi streak from time to time. Trump just gave him a promotion.
I don't remember the name Paul Ingrassia. Perhaps these headlines will help. The 30-year-old Trump diehard.
30. He's 30. She told us. Is it that right? Yeah. Yeah. So he's a 30. Just a kid. Just a kid blowing off steam saying he has a Nazi streak.
Saw his nomination to lead the government's whistleblower office collapse just last month after a slew of racist text messages surfaced. It was too much for Senate Republicans, who refused to confirm him. But over at the White House, Ingrassia kept his job as special liaison to the Department of Homeland Security, and today he has a new administration role, Deputy General Counsel at the General Services Administration. Isaac?
I mean, look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If thinking Nazis are bad makes me a biased reporter, I guess I'm a biased reporter. This doesn't seem that complicated, right? This guy said that he has a little bit of a Nazi streak in him. A lot of other comments were in those text messages that Politico had the reporting on. It is just sort of astounding that this is job number 3 that he had.
So he's being given another role in the Trump administration after it was exposed that he said, I do have a Nazi streak in me from time to time. I will admit it. And was the one who said MLK Day, what was it, belongs in the depths of hell or something. Now he's getting another position. And by the way, your little support for Hitler, remember what we talked about on the bonus show? What was it? One testicle, micropenis. That's what Hitler, that's who they love so dear. A mass murdering, one testicle having, micropenis dictator. And he got a promotion.